The Andy Pollin Show.
We got to go after this with everything we got, figuring they're going to come with everything they got.
I'll start off by saying I'm bored, I'm broke, and I'm back.
The Andy Pollin Show on ESPN 630 starts right now.
Oh, my goodness. Next 6 weeks are going to be so much fun. Well, they've already been fun last week or so with Alex Ovechkin closing in on the Wayne Gretzky record. Another goal last night. His fourth goal in 2 games. He got 24 games to go. He needs a dozen to break the record. You don't have to be a math genius to know if he scores every other game, he's going to do it. And right now, he's projected to do it in early April. It's remarkable. And the numbers for a 39-year-old player are just off the charts. What he is doing is truly historical, and the goal last night not only pulls him within 11 of tying Gretzky, but what he did was add to his own record by scoring 30 goals in a season for the 19th time. He set the record last year with 18, so now he's done it 19 times. That's remarkable consistency. That's like Henry Aaron breaking Babe Ruth's record. In that he was year after year getting 40 home runs, 42 home runs, and eventually he got to the point where he could break the record. Now, Gretzky, I believe, holds the all-time single-season goal-scoring record. It's somewhere around 70 or something like that. Ovechkin hasn't done that, but with remarkable consistency, he's been able to pull this off. And here are some of the numbers on this. He joins Teemu Selanne, Johnny Busick, and Gordie Howe, who did it 3 times after the age of 39, and the only players to get 30-plus goals in a season at 39 or older. He reached the 30-goal mark in 42 games. That's the 5th fewest Ovechkin has needed to get there in his career. I mean, think about that. He's been playing hockey for 20 years, and this is the 5th fewest number of games that he's needed to get the record. Of course, he missed 16 in the middle of the year because of the broken leg. That's another thing that's adding to this. I mean, most people take a year, 6 months to really fully recover from an injury like that, a broken leg. He's back and as good as he's ever been. I mean, it is just absolutely remarkable what he's been able to do. Now, the goal did not give the Caps a victory last night. They lost 3-1 to Calgary, but it was only their 12th regulation loss of the season. Think about that they've only lost 12 games in regulation this year. And some of them while Ovechkin was out, of course. But, man, it's just remarkable. And they've got 3 more games on the homestand. And pretty soon, Wayne Gretzky and the commissioner, Gary Bettman, are going to have to fly from city to city as they follow Ovechkin around as he gets closer and closer to the record. It's a lot of fun to watch. You know, I watched that, I'm sure you did, bits and pieces, maybe watched the whole thing. It's now 30 years old, the documentary, Baseball, that was done on PBS. And I remember the segment about DiMaggio going after the 56-game hitting streak, or he had the record. The record was 44 by Wee Willie Keeler, later tied by Pete Rose. But once DiMaggio got past that, you know, was how far could he go? And in those days, news didn't travel the way it does now. They played baseball in the afternoon, mostly. There were some night games. But if you wanted to find out what DiMaggio did, you'd have to wait for the afternoon paper to find out about it. Maybe radio would have it. If you listen to the game, you'd get it, or they'd do it in a news report on some station. But the flow of information was not like it is now. And people would ask from place to place, hey, did he get one today? Did DiMaggio get one? And now we're watching the chase of Alex Ovechkin as it moves to tomorrow night. And they will host St. Louis, which is one of the teams that Wayne Gretzky played for through his career. And adding to this as well, not to take anything away from Gretzky, because the trade from Edmonton to Los Angeles is one of the most ridiculous trades ever made in the history of sports. The greatest player ever to play hockey was traded in his prime. Think about that. But he played for 4 teams. He played for Edmonton, he played for Los Angeles, he played for St. Louis, and he finished up his career with the Rangers. One team for Alex Ovechkin, which only adds to this. Even Gordie Howe. Gordie Howe played over 20 years with the Red Wings, then retired for a year, didn't like it, came back in the WHA, and played with Houston with both of his sons, which is another cool thing. and that team eventually moved to Hartford, and now they are in Carolina. So I mean, it's just an incredible thing. All right, Jon Allen has gotten permission from the team to seek a trade. I would think that this is likely the end for him in Washington. He's been an excellent player, but the way that money works these days in sports, you just don't keep him around. They would be a $16 million cap hit. His contract is $15.5 million base salary, no guaranteed money. So if they don't find a trade partner, they're probably going to cut him before June 1st, so they could save that money. And, he did miss 9 games last season with a torn pectoral muscle. Came back, played pretty well for them in the end of the season. Got to play in playoff games, which had not been part of his career, unfortunately. Coming here in 2017, playing for mostly bad teams. He finally got to play for a good one last year and then got hurt. He finished with 19 tackles, again, missing 9 games, so there's that. But, he came here as a late first-round pick in 2017 because there was concern about his health. He'd had some shoulder issues while he was at Alabama. So the clock is ticking. Everybody moves on at some point. Joe Montana didn't finish his career in San Francisco. It happens. Those things actually occur. It's life in the NFL. And this was Adam Peters yesterday, his news conference at the Combine. We're supposed to hear from Dan Quinn. I think it's either today or tomorrow. But this was Adam Peters, the GM, on the confirmation that they are telling Jon Allen, go look for a trade partner.
Yeah, that is true. We have done that, and with Jon, he's another person who's been a great commander, a great person for this franchise, and he's going in the last year of his deal, and wanted to give him and his representation, Blake Baratz, who's a really good agent. They just talked about it and said wanted to be able to explore opportunities, and so we let them do that, and we're staying in contact with them every day. Just texted with them this morning, and really everything's still on the table in terms of whether it's a trade or staying here or whatever. So we're still going through that. It's kind of early in the stages. We haven't done a lot of exploring yet, but that's kind of where we're at right now.
I would say in the modern history of the team, they go back to 1932, and Turk Edwards is in the Hall of Fame. I never saw Turk Edwards play. His career wrapped up in the mid-30s here, but or late 30s, I guess. But Turk Edwards is in the Hall of Fame as a tackle. But in the modern era, let's limit it to post-merger, which would be 1970. I think Jon Allen is no worse than the third best tackle they've ever had. Dave Butts is the best. I would say Dyron Talbert is number 2. He was not just a great tackle, but he was a team leader. And I would say that Allen is no worse than number 3. And it also, I guess, tells you about the position because there are not that many tackles in the Hall of Fame. Merlin Olsen comes to mind, maybe a few others, but that's not a position that usually creates a lot of attention because what you're doing is you're tying up blockers. And the duo of Dave Butts and Darrell Grant, that's what made those Dexter Manley sacks happen. That's the reason that they were a formidable defense during those days. And so Jonathan Allen likely moving on, but a great career here. The other newsworthy thing from Peters yesterday, and probably shouldn't really be newsworthy because he said the same thing in his season wrap-up news conference, but just to be sure, on Marshon Lattimore, who has 2 years left on his contract but not guaranteed. Remember, they made the trade for him at the deadline, and he missed most of the games because of injury, because of a hamstring injury. But in terms of releasing him now and just cutting your losses, no, that's not going to happen, says Peters.
I spoke about it at the end of the year, and he came into a tough situation, and he competed his his tail off, and he's the type of guy we want on the field, and we're really excited to have him in this offseason and build with him.
Now, they do have a lot of cap space, as they did last year, and Peters smartly did not go crazy. Maybe one or two more free agents might have put him over the top against Philly, but Philly was clearly the best team in the league last year. They weren't going to beat him no matter how many people that they loaded up on, and now with the cap going up, the space is pretty similar. But it doesn't sound like here in Peters talking to reporters that they're going to change their philosophy on what they do in free agents. And maybe they are, and he's just not tipping his hand. But it would seem like this is a year and next year as well to go for it because you have a franchise quarterback on a rookie deal. Jaden Daniels does not do that much money, doesn't tie up much of the cap. And if you want to build a Super Bowl team, as Seattle did with Russell Wilson when he was on a rookie deal, now would be the time to do it. But at least from what he's saying here, it doesn't sound like Peters is going to go in that direction.
It's the same as last year. We have a little less cap space, but we really operate more off a cash budget. And so cap space and that stuff is always kind of whatever's on the internet's not always the case. But I think not really compare this year to last year, but we just have a lot of free agents and we still have a lot of holes to fill on the roster. We have, I think, the second least amount of players on our roster in the league right now. So we'll be busy, but we want to spend, on Commanders and spend the right way. So that's how we're going to look at it.
How important is it to get a few of those deals done before free agency opens? Some of the guys you've identified as Commanders, keep them in-house.
Yeah, certainly you'd like to do that, and we're talking with a lot of those guys right now. It just depends on what they want to do and if they want to, if we can come to an agreement before free agency. Some guys want to hit free agency and see what their market is. Some guys want to get stuff done right away. The great thing is the culture that DQ created, there's a lot of guys that want to come back, and we've had a lot of really good conversations with that, and so proud of that, proud of what DQ's created, and having a lot of guys that want to be Commanders going forward.
Tell us which ones want to come back.
No.
Well, there are two that everybody knows. Zach Ertz, he's a free agent. It would seem that they would want him back, but again, he's an older player, mid-30s, and Bobby Wagner, who was the clear leader of the defense, had a hell of a year, 100 tackles, and everybody looked up to him, and he, I think, made a huge difference this year. But he is a free agent. He has played up until this year his entire career on the West Coast. He had been with Seattle. He took a year to go to the Rams, goes back to Seattle. Now he's on the East Coast, and although he is working on his master's degree at Howard, he's supposed to wrap that up this summer. And so whatever tie that would be to keep him here, that would go away. And now Pete Carroll, who had Wagner when he went to back-to-back Super Bowls and won a Super Bowl and realizes his value, he's now with the Raiders, and sounds like he's got his eye on Bobby Wagner.
I thought it was a remarkable season that he had in many ways. I know he was a great asset to Danny, putting together the system and the approach and the principles and stuff. We all kind of grew up in the same ways, and so the message and the voice that Bobby had on that club, and particularly with the quarterback, the relationship that he's established, was irreplaceable for them. And so, I know Bobby is he's a free agent.
Yeah, he is a free agent, and Pete Carroll knows that. So, how high will the bidding go if he wants him and if Peters wants him to stay here, and how much will it mean to him to stay here with a team that he helped to take to the NFC Championship game? And as they say, the old saying that Bum Phillips had this year, we knocked on the door. Next year, we're going to kick the damn door down. Maybe that would be enough of an enticement to stay. But that's going to be one to keep an eye on. Bobby Wagner. And then there's the Myles Garrett situation. Garrett has said he wants out of Cleveland. And Cleveland, so far, isn't indicating that they're going to deal him. Now, they wouldn't do that because the leverage that they have right now is say, no, we're not going to trade him. So it's, make me an offer I can't refuse. This Jeremy Fowler covers the NFL for ESPN on our morning show on Sportsmanlike yesterday on what he senses in the Garrett situation.
I'm told no. The Browns have been pretty firm that they're a hard no right now. Now, I think other teams around the league are expecting that to eventually change, but there have not been really any substantial talks. I don't think, originally going into this, I was expecting every team in the league to be calling Cleveland. I was told that hasn't been the case because teams know that the Browns don't really have a lot of incentive to trade a player like Myles Garrett right now. It doesn't make a lot of sense for them. Closer to the draft, maybe we'll see some action, that they'll be blown away by an offer. But right now, it just hasn't been something that has traction. It's fun to talk about. But, we were going to debate, I think, on the shows today about the Eagles, right? Certainly there's an expectation that the Eagles are going to go after a pass rusher because Josh Sweat they're probably going to lose in free agency. there are some options they can look into. They can try to trade Bryce Huff, who they have on the roster. But pass rush for the Eagles, I think, will have some movement. Now, it would make some sense for them to call Cleveland, where Andrew Berry, the GM, is a disciple of Howie Roseman. He's from the Eagles tree. You know, the Eagles are always aggressive. If Washington goes after Myles Garrett, do the Eagles say, no way, we're stepping in now? You know, like there are a lot of factors that make sense, but that doesn't mean that, A, the Eagles are going to do that right now, and B, that Cleveland is even willing to entertain it.
But you just presented such a great option for a team in Cleveland that needs to rebuild that they're not taking advantage of. We got about 30 to 45 seconds here, Jeremy Fowler. Last thing here. What does selectively aggressive mean for the Dallas Cowboys?
It's so funny. We were talking about that in the meeting just a minute ago. Like, selectively means you choose carefully, I guess.
Right, okay.
But if you're aggressive, are you choosing carefully? Like I kind of, or is it an oxymoron? Like, can you even be selectively aggressive?
Good question.
You know, so I think that's Dallas's way of saying we're going to put some flyers out, but we have some price tags on some players that we're not willing to go over. You know, they have some guys they're trying to re-sign that they are, you know, they want to re-sign to a point. They're not going to get crazy. I expect them to be more aggressive than last year, though, where they signed a long snapper the first week of free agency, and that was basically it.
Yeah, because they didn't have any money. I left that last part in about the Cowboys because that's part of the big story, too. Not that the Cowboys would be in position to make a run at Myles Garrett, but also the part about the Eagles possibly wanting to get Garrett so Washington doesn't get him. Can you imagine that? Free agency started in 1993, so we're 32 years into this. And Washington has been so bad over that period of time. This might be the first time in the history of free agency, or I should say also the salary cap era, because that came along with free agency. This is the first time that a team wants to make sure that Washington doesn't get another player. You know, it must be like, hey, Albert Ainsworth, knock yourself out. You know, go ahead. Go sign him for $100 million. Guy gesund. Now it's like, ooh, they might get Myles Garrett. That might put him over the top. We don't want to do that. Interesting. The Cowboys thing, that is in reference to what Stephen Jones, Jerry's kid, said. He's, I guess, the president of the team. Jerry's the general manager. And Stephen Jones said the other day, obviously our goals historically have been to try and fill as many of our musts and needs before the draft so you can pick the best player on the board. Didn't get that totally accomplished last year, but certainly that's always the goal. And every year is different in terms of what those musts and needs are. Then you also have to marry what's in free agency, where the draft is heavy and where you can help yourselves in the draft. They've got Micah Parsons, who he wants to get on a long-term deal. They want to do that too. And he's set to play on the fifth-year option, which is about $21 million. He's looking for an extension in the 30s. And, you know, they've got holes to fill. Zach Martin's going to retire. There's a lot of things they have to do. But, you know, as Jerry said last year, they were all in. Now Stephen Jones is saying we're going to be selectively aggressive. Good luck with that. And by the way, Andrew Berry, the GM of the Browns, just, you know, for the sake of listening to this, again, reiterated the stance of the team that they're just not going to deal Myles Garrett.
So Myles, as you guys have all heard me say, he's a huge part of our organization, really good person. He's an awesome player. Understand the trade request and everything, but our stance really has not changed. You know, we can't imagine a situation where not having Myles as a part of the organization is best for the Browns.
Yeah, but down the road, they could imagine that. And once a deal is made, and it seems very likely to me that they're going to make a deal. It's a bad team with a player they could get assets for, and he's a diminishing asset because he's now 30 years old. I mean, how many players can you keep around for a team that's going to take 2 to 3 years to rebuild, whereas you can get draft capital and free up some money under your cap because he's still got a good contract. He'll get a good contract and an extension someplace else. So eventually this dam will break, but, you know, that's good business to say, oh, no. And then, well, how about if we make you an offer you can't refuse? Ooh, maybe that. We'll get to some basketball next. Luka Doncic in Los Angeles, though, against his former team, came through. We'll get to that and more as we continue. It's the Andy Pollin Show, ESPN 630.
The Andy Pollin Show on ESPN 630, the sports capital.
Jim Lampley's got a new book out, a bio. It's called It Happened, and he's making the rounds telling stories. And in about an hour, I'll get to a story that he told on a podcast about his daughter and Muhammad Ali babysitting for her. It's a great story told by a great storyteller, and that's coming up in the next hour. Meantime, Luka Doncic got a little bit of revenge last night. The big one is going to be April 9th when the Lakers go to Dallas. But Dallas was in Los Angeles last night. And the general manager, Nico Harrison, who traded him, and Luka made it pretty clear he didn't want to go. He didn't want to leave Dallas, but he didn't have a choice. Now he's with a team that's playing well. And there are people who believe that the Lakers can make it to the finals from the West, that they're that good now with LeBron James, who's 40 years old but playing like 30, and Luka and he seem to be cooking. I mean, when they play together, now Luka's missed a game here or there, but last night he was motivated, obviously. He claimed that he didn't see Harrison there. If I was Harrison, I wouldn't show up. But Harrison did stand on the sideline in midcourt during pregame warmups. Doncic said he didn't notice him. Yeah, sure. There's even a photo from behind the head of Luka, and it looks like he's clearly looking at Harrison in the stands wearing a blue suit. But be that as it may, he got what he wanted last night as Luka had a triple-double. He had 19 points, 15 rebounds, and 12 assists. And he now joins LeBron and Russell Westbrook, who played here for a year, as the only players to put up triple-doubles against all 30 teams. Now, his shooting wasn't very good, 6 of 17 from the field, 1 for 7 from 3. LeBron had the bigger night, scoring 27 points, 7 of 9 shooting in the fourth quarter to seal up the win, 107-99. By the way, the line was 9.5, so they didn't cover for whatever that's worth. But Mavericks guard Kyrie Irving was the top scorer in the game with 35. He said the matchup was awkward as S, but he said at the same time it was fun. We got a chance to feel like we were in practice, and that was a good reflection point. And seeing the crowd cheer for him to get along, it was just fun competing. Now, Anthony Davis is hurt, so you really can't get a true measure of the trade because Davis, you got to give up a great player to get a great player, and he in his first game with Dallas injured his, I think it's his thigh, so he may be back in time, probably will be back in time for the game on April the 9th, but Luka gets the hand up from last night. Now, before last night's game, Jeannie Buss, who's the owner of the Lakers, she was on the Rich Eisen show. She's promoting a show that's on Netflix now. And let's see, the name of that show, whatever it's called. It's a show based on her life. It's a comedy done on Netflix about a woman who owns an NBA team. And so she talked about that. She was there to promote it, but she also discussed how they got this deal done and how Luka winds up incredibly in a trade that has everybody still shaking their head 3 weeks later. How the hell this happened?
When you see certain players in the league and you think, there's no way I'll ever have that player on my team. Like it's just impossible unless you draft a star like that. Mm-hmm. They usually don't move. And when the opportunity came up, we were not looking to move Anthony Davis. He was he was our rock solid player. And so we had to give up a lot to get Luka, but the opportunity to get him. And, I look back and, the last time I saw Kobe alive was about a month before he passed. And he had brought Gigi to the Lakers game to see Luka play because Luka was Gigi's favorite player. And, it's just the idea that Luka is now a Laker. I know how happy that would make Kobe and Gigi.
How happy has it made LeBron?
I think it's working.
No, I know.
We'll
but I also, listen, Jeannie, I understand the sensitivity here because Anthony Davis is a terrific basketball player and was, I'm sure,
it's a championship
right there on the ring on your finger from 2020. And I also understand that he was definitely your vision of when LeBron does retire, that's the guy you want people to come down to crypto.com to go see. And I totally get that. And now it's changed. It's now Luka in that role. So I understand the sensitivities about all that when it comes to Anthony Davis, certainly tonight with the Mavericks being in the building. But that said, when did it arrive? When did it finally first land on your radar screen that Luka was a possibility even in your world?
The conversation started a couple weeks before the trade was executed. And what was really important was Rob Pelinka, the general manager, and I, we did not want any part of it to leak out because it's very disruptive to a team that's trying to focus on getting better. We have a rookie coach in JJ Redick, and the idea of blowing something up mid-season to make a trade like that, if it didn't go through, would have repercussions. So it was really, tight-lipped, and each step of the way was discussed, and we were able to make a deal that both sides were comfortable with.
Well, mission accomplished on keeping it quiet.
Thank you.
I mean, the number of people that were just stunned. It was the whole world. It was the basketball world, just absolutely stunned that this got pulled off. And that also includes Luka. Quite honestly,
he had no idea.
What was your first conversation with him like, if you don't mind me asking?
Just, I think it still hadn't set in with him,
right?
Because it's very humbling to be traded. Nobody wants to go through that, and he just bought a house and was settling in, and so I think it surprised him. But I think now, it's been 3 weeks, so he's kind of getting on board.
Well, how have you helped with that process? Like, how have you or your team handled his mental state? Because again, I totally understand this, not to equate me with Luka, but I thought I was going to be on ESPN my entire life, and I was there for 7 years, and they allowed me to walk. And I was stunned. It took me a long time. A couple times, actually, in my first year on NFL Network, I just said, you're watching SportsCenter. It came out of my mouth. You know what I mean?
Yep.
So I totally get it. But so how have you and your team been part of his sort of intake?
We've embraced his family, his management, everything we can do to make his transition smoother is what we're doing. And, it takes time because he's got to decide, he doesn't know LA. He's got to figure out where he wants to live. There's just a lot going on. Plus he's got to figure out how to fit into this team. But, JJ Redick played with him for, I think a month or so with the Mavericks. So they had a relationship. Dorian Finney-Smith, who had been his teammate with the Mavericks, we had just acquired a few weeks before. So, we're just trying to build that continuity, that community where he feels embraced and, he can accomplish all the things that he wants to. And when I met him, the first thing I said to him, because I think a lot of times when players come to the Lakers, there's such a history that it's kind of like, how am I ever going to stand out when all these great Laker players, how am I going to get my jersey up there? And, the first thing I said to him was, you're going to write your own chapter in the Laker history book. We're so excited to have you. And, and then he said, he really wished that Kobe was there.
No kidding.
Yeah.
He said that.
Yeah. I mean, it's that was like a very important relationship, that, Kobe really took him under his wing and was supportive of him. And so I think he feels that, even though without Kobe present, that there's that kind of feel with our organization. And, we'll do our best.
And so, again, I know you delegate quite a bit, but were you involved in the first night as to who was introduced last, or is that just Luka and LeBron handling that?
I think that was
on
the
his
team.
First night?
Yeah, that was the team deciding, and I'm not exactly sure whose idea it was, but when that happened, I thought that was a really special moment that they figured that out. And
apparently, it was LeBron. who reached out to Luka, and but I would imagine you as the governor of the team, you would want to make sure you weren't even.
No,
I
wouldn't.
Huh?
No, but I mean that is so like LeBron, and he's captain of the team. That doesn't surprise me if it was LeBron's suggestion.
That is Jeannie Buss, the owner of the Lakers, and she's got the new show on Netflix. It's called Running Girl, and it's about being the female owner of a team. As far as so far so good on the Luka trade, but everything will come down to how they do in the playoffs, and if they can make a run to the Western Conference Finals, all those things. But last night they get a leg up with Luka with a triple-double as they beat Dallas, and we'll see. We'll see what happens the rest of the way. But so far so good on the LeBron-Luka pairing. Some more NBA from last night. We had a game where 299 points were scored. It was between Memphis and Phoenix. This is almost NBA All-Star Game territory, or at least in the old format. It did go to overtime, and Memphis won over Phoenix 151-148. John Morant wound up with 29 points. And just goes to show you, if you're not getting it done early in your start, just keep on shooting. He was 2 for 14 from the field in the first three quarters, then scored 15 points in the fourth quarter, including the last 11 to help send it into overtime. This game had 22 ties and 22 lead changes. And Phoenix had 5 players with at least 20. Devin Booker, 28. Durant had 26. Beal had 24. Bol had 23. That's Manut's son, by the way. Grayson Allen used to do dirty tricks at Duke. He had 21 points in this game last night. And ABA used to have games like this all the time. Denver Nuggets, when Doug Moe coached them, used to have games routinely with scores like that. But I guess it was entertaining. But it seems like there'd be a smidge of defense. 299 points. Did go to overtime. Give them that. Diana Taurasi retired. She's 42 years old. She can still play. She played very well for Phoenix in this last WNBA season. And with all the hype about Caitlin Clark, and she's great, no question about it. And she may be the greatest shooter ever in women's basketball. But Diana Taurasi, to me, remains the greatest women's player ever. The greatest women's player I've ever seen. I remember watching her back at Connecticut over 20 years ago. She is a 3-time WNBA champion, 3-time NCAA champion, and a 6-time Olympic champion, including as being a part of the last team that won, the gold medal team. She is the most competitive player you will ever see. Maybe there are some who are as competitive, but you won't find anybody more competitive than her. In her freshman year, UConn lost in the Final Four. She declared, with 3 years of eligibility, that they would not lose another tournament game. And she was right. They won 3 straight championships. And then when the Mercury lost in the 2021 WNBA Finals to Chicago, she smashed a locker room door. I mean, that is some competitiveness. And she is the WNBA logo. I mean, she has done it all in women's basketball. And at 42, it's not that she can't play. Again, she was the third leading scorer for her team last night at 15 points a game. And she played 36 games, which was the most she had ever played during her WNBA career. But she has a partner, Penny Taylor. They have a couple of kids. And it's time to settle down. I imagine she'll get into coaching. I can't imagine she'll leave women's basketball. But just remember this. Caitlin Clark is the most sensational player in women's basketball. But if you're looking at the best who ever played the game, this is, in fact, the Michael Jordan of women's basketball, Diana Taurasi. There was even some talk, and it would not have been realistic, but when she was at Connecticut, there was some talk that maybe she should play men's basketball. She was that good, and she said, no, that's not my game. But man, was she a great women's player? And at 42, with tread still left on the tire, looking to move on to other things. Of all teams which dealt with the Ray Rice situation, which has gone back 12, 13 years, where the video surfaced of Ray Rice dragging his then-girlfriend off the elevator. And the question was, why had she passed out? and it was believed, she had too much to drink or whatever it was, and so he takes her off. There's no other video of this other than that. And so the Ravens look at it, and the NFL looks at it, and they ask some questions of Ray Rice, and there's no charges pressed by the girlfriend or anything. And, they have a news conference, and Ray Rice doesn't really apologize for it. His girlfriend is sitting there next to him, and the team, I don't think even announces a suspension for that. I think it was just like maybe a fine or whatever it was. It wasn't much. And then TMZ comes up with the surveillance video inside the elevator, and you see Ray Rice decking his girlfriend. And that's the end of his NFL career. He's released by the Ravens, and it's, we didn't know about this. Well, how did TMZ so easily get a hold of the video, and a multi-billion-dollar operation like the NFL didn't get it? Well, they didn't really want to get it, did they? They did not. So that was the Baltimore Ravens. They were involved in this as a team. Yes, they had nothing to do as a team with what Ray Rice did in the elevator, but that was on their hotel bill, and the way they seemingly spackled it over was not a good look. So, a few years ago, when the Browns suspended Deshaun Watson for 6 games because of his behavior towards massage therapists, Ravens coach John Harbaugh said the organization had a, quote, zero tolerance policy toward any kind of sexual or physical conduct towards women. Eric DeCosta, general manager of the Ravens, had his news conference yesterday, just like Adam Peters had his at the Combine, was asked about, well, what about that? This is an organization that supposedly has a zero-tolerance policy, and now you have your kicker, Justin Tucker, accused of sexually inappropriate behavior by now 16 massage therapists, according to the Baltimore Banner. DeCosta said, quote, the allegations are serious, concerning. The amount of allegations are serious, concerning. He said, I think we're fortunate that the league is doing an investigation. We'll wait as patiently as we can for as much information as we can. We'll make our decisions based on that. And they said, well, Eric, what about the zero tolerance policy? Why is this case, he said, this case is different because there are no absolutes. What? No absolutes? Well, yes, there hadn't been anything proven other than allegations. Watson wound up settling, I think, with most of the accusers in his case in Houston. John Harbaugh said that the team would wait for the investigations. Quote, that's what the process is for. That seems to be a far cry from what they said in 2022 when Deshaun Watson was suspended. And Harbaugh said, I respect what Steve Bisciotti and Dick Cass created here almost 10 years ago. Basically, we're kind of zero tolerance. We have to know the truth. You have to understand the circumstances, but we've stayed away from that particular situation. When we draft players, when we sign them as free agents, that's Steve's decision, and I'm glad we have that policy. So they had this zero tolerance policy in 2022, and now we're in 2025. And it's, we're going to wait and see what the league comes up with. That's why they have investigations. That is, in fact, hypocrisy, right? I mean, even if half of these are true, 16, eight of them are true, it's not something that you tolerate. And this is a kicker that was 73% last year. If I guess, not that this would excuse it, but you go to the wall for a franchise quarterback. Do you do it for a declining kicker with an organization that's already been smudged by something awful? It's a while back, but, post that, the organization said, well, we're not going to have any of that. And now we've got 16 women coming forward. Of course, it's been denied by Tucker and his agent, although 2 of the massage parlors have confirmed that they have not allowed him back in. The women so far have not been named, but they have come forward. And I just can't imagine that the Baltimore Banner is rolling around Baltimore and saying, hey, would you like to make allegations against Justin Tucker? I can't believe that. And so if I were running the Ravens, this is the way I would handle it. I would say he is suspended, and there's no season to play right now, so it's no big deal. Just say he's suspended, and we'll work with the NFL to fully investigate this. But we cannot have a player taking part in off-season workouts and whatever else is involved with team activities while this is going on. We've already had a horrible situation with Ray Rice. We have distanced ourselves from Deshaun Watson and what happened in Houston. And now you've got a kicker, a player, a premier player. He's been there for a dozen years. He was, until last year, the most accurate kicker in the history of football, and he does have the stats to wind up in the Hall of Fame. But, you're playing chicken here. This is basically washing your hands of it and turning it over to the league, who already proved with your organization they're not really looking that hard. Because otherwise, they would have gotten the TMZ video or the video that TMZ got before they got it. All right, coming up in the next hour, more from Adam Peters from the Combine yesterday, Tony and Mike on the tush push, and Jim Lampley with a great story about Muhammad Ali. It's the Andy Pollin Show, ESPN 630. There's some interesting rumblings from two players who are going to wind up in the Hall of Fame. Yep. J.J. Watt has made a bet that if he loses it, could put him back in the league with, believe it or not, the Cincinnati Bengals, which is bizarre. And Rob Gronkowski may be looking for attention, but there's some rumblings that he's looking to get back in the league as well. Both of them great players, both of them television people. Maybe it's just publicity stuff, but we'll get to the JJ situation later this hour. Tony and Mike on the tush push, and Jim Lampley with one hell of a story about Muhammad Ali babysitting for his daughter. Lampley's got a book out about his life called It Happened, and boy, did it happen to him over his life. The sideline reporter, the woman, usually women now, I guess men have done it. Armin Katayan has done it. Actually, to be fair, there are a couple of them. Like if there's a guy, Evan Washburn, I think, does it for CBS. So they do have men and women as sideline reporters. But Lampley was the first. And the backstory on that is really cool. And I'll get to that in about 20 minutes or so. Some more stuff from the Combine yesterday. Adam Peters held his news conference. I believe we're supposed to hear this afternoon from Dan Quinn. Both coaches and GMs are holding news conferences for every team this week. And it was Peters' turn yesterday morning about 11 o'clock, 12 o'clock, something like that. And there really wasn't a lot of news coming out about this. He did confirm that they have given Jonathan Allen permission to seek a trade. He's due $15.5 million with no guaranteed money this year. Seems like a foregone conclusion. He's gone. If they cut him before June 1st, they don't owe him any money. So I would expect if they can't make a deal, and we're talking really, if they get something for him, it's like a 6th or a 7th round pick, and he would have to renegotiate his salary because nobody's picking him up for that kind of money. He'll be in the league somewhere next year, but more than likely they will cut him loose. And at least he got a good farewell because he was a good soldier, really good player, maybe the third best tackle that they've ever had on this team. I would put him behind Dave Butts and Dyron Talbert all time, at least in the modern era. And, he didn't complain. He was a leader, but the teams were terrible. He did not play on a winning team until this year. Isn't that incredible? He was here since 2017. He was on a 500 team, 8-1, but he has not been on a team that won until this year, and they made it all the way to the NFC title game. And the fact that he was playing in the playoffs was incredible as well, because it used to be if you had a torn pectoral muscle, you were out for the year. He wound up missing 9 games, made it back, end of the season, was there for the playoff run, played pretty well, but just with the money, it doesn't make sense to bring him back. Or at least have him play under that deal. I guess it's possible they could renegotiate and he could lower his salary, but more than likely, I think he's going to be gone. That's why they took Johnny Newton in the draft last year, and he played mostly well. He jumped off sides in that Pittsburgh game, which basically cost them any chance they had to come back. But overall, he played pretty well this year. The other piece of news was that Marshon Lattimore is going to stay. That's something that Adam Peters said at the end of the season anyway, so that really isn't newsworthy. It's just confirmation that they're not going to part ways with a player who they gave up draft picks to get. And he gave him some spots, but he got worked by A.J. Brown in that championship game against Philadelphia. He had some issues, and he was coming back from an injury, which may have been a problem, a hamstring injury. But he's going to be back next year. And then you got Terry McLaurin, and certainly they want Terry McLaurin on the team, but he's going into the last year of his deal, and they always backload these contracts. So more than likely, he's going to negotiate so they can move some of that money forward. And he'll work out probably a 2 or 3 year extension. Again, not all of it guaranteed. And, he's a guy probably in his best interest. This is just me saying that. I don't know how he feels about this. He's from Indianapolis. He's from the Midwest. He may want to wind up back there. But he's established himself as such a great player and a mensch here that I think if he stays in town, he'll have a great future in whatever he wants to do, business, even politics. I mean, I think that Terry McLaurin could conceivably one day run for mayor. That's the kind of person that he's exhibited himself to be in the time he's been here, if he wants to do that. But in terms of what they're going to do with his contract, you're not getting anything out of Adam Peters.
Yeah, I don't think we're going to get into those conversations, and if we do, those will probably remain private. But first of all, congratulations to Terry on his wedding with Caitlin, and we love Terry. He's a great commander, and we're really looking forward to having him again next year.
Yeah, he'll be there. It's just a question of how the contract is worked out. You're also hearing a lot about, will they go out and get another receiver? Can you get somebody who's an alpha on the other side of Terry McLaurin? Terry McLaurin is a great move the chains kind of receiver. He can be a deep threat, but he's, in terms of the top receivers in the league, he's probably not even in the top 20, maybe 15. He's a great player and great character, which adds a lot, and he's a leader. And so when you hear about receivers, sometimes McLaurin's the opposite of this, but the diva receiver, the one that has to have the ball, that has to get the attention. They'd like to have somebody of that talent, but it sounds like if you listen to Peters, they're not going to rock the boat with somebody who might come in with that kind of attitude with what they've been able to build here in 1 year.
I've been a part of teams that when you start sacrificing that, then it usually doesn't work. And so, we've set out and really, I think what's really cool is in our exit interviews this year, we talked to a lot of players, and one of the biggest things that they hit on was we liked all the people you brought in, the players and the commanders and the competitors, and so don't lose sight of that. So we heard that from our players. We felt it ourselves. So that's always going to be at the core of what we do. And there may be an exception here or there, or you make a mistake, and that not on purpose, but that's going to always be at the core of what we do.
Yeah, that has never mattered here before. Whatever you heard about Albert Hainsworth, they totally disregarded. They brought him in here anyway. Dana Stubblefield, bad guy, recently released from jail on a technicality after he was convicted of raping a woman with developmental disabilities. So we've had some bad character guys here before. That's not going to happen here. So whoever they bring in, whatever talent that player has, he could be a game buster, but he better fit in with the culture that they built here. That's a big part of what they do. Last thing, this is a page from the Joe Gibbs book. Always talk about the fans and what they mean. And so this was Adam Peters. Dan Quinn does this to some degree, but Adam Peters decided that this was a good way to go yesterday.
We're proud of how the DMV's rallied behind us, and really thrilled about what's to come, and just to see how our fans came out towards the end of the year and really supported us. And I think DQ's talked about it, but some of those games they really the players feel it. They really do. The Falcons game in particular, and so really proud of that. Really happy for that, and had a lot of people that I know that grew up in the DMV and have reached out and said how happy they are. So that's something that I think we're all proud of, and we have a lot to thank. We have Josh to thank for that, and DQ and his staff, and so we're going to do whatever we can to keep making those people proud.
I'm at an age where I still say Washington metropolitan area. I guess DMV is fully accepted now as the area of the district, Maryland and Virginia. But to me, DMV always connotates standing in line. You know, get your eye test, take your driving test, go into the DMV. Oh, you don't want to do that. You got to change the title on your car. Oh, what a pain in the tuchus, you know? So Adam Peters is new here. He's a West Coast guy. He went to school at UCLA. He's worked for the 49ers. Now he's in Washington. Josh Harris uses it too, but Harris has been gone from here a long time too. He lives in Florida. I guess DMV is fully accepted. It's fully accepted now. Just to me, it's always going to be Washington metropolitan area, and I'm from Maryland. I grew up in Maryland. I live in Maryland, and anybody who's been here knows that if you live in Maryland, no matter where you work, you live in Maryland the rest of your life. If you're from Virginia, and even if you work in Maryland, you live in Virginia. Everybody goes to D.C. People from Maryland don't go to Virginia. People from Virginia don't go to Maryland. Just the way it is. But, okay, DMV, I give up. If that's what it is, it's DMV. All right, the tush push. And the reports are, one from the NFL Network, I believe Mark Maskey had this in the Post yesterday as well, that the owners, when they get together next month for their meetings, are going to discuss the idea of banning the tush push. And people forget this, but it wasn't just in college football, because remember, you had the Bush push, which was a USC Notre Dame game going back when Reggie Bush played there, 15 years ago, and that Matt Leinart was at the goal line, and it was a quarterback sneak, and Reggie Bush, if you saw it on tape, clearly pushed him from behind, which at the time in college football, I don't know how college football works, but at the time you could not advance the runner. And it was the same thing in the NFL. And somewhere along the line, the rule got changed. And the Philadelphia Eagles went, okay, let's do this. And they have benefited from the tush push in a big way. Some call it the brotherly shove, but tush push seems to have caught on. And so now the Green Bay Packers have brought up getting rid of it. I guess it's called a resolution. But there are other coaches who have spoken the last couple of days say they'd like to see it go as well. I'd like to see it go. To me, it's not a football play. Doesn't look like a football play. Shouldn't be a football play. But it's legal, and if it's legal, you're going to use it. Tony and Mike weighing in yesterday on the news that the NFL is going to examine this, the owners, next month, and possibly consider doing away with it.
The Eagles have used the play to great effect, but one team, Diana Rossini reports that it's the Packers, has proposed banning it. Packers president Mark Murphy has called the play bad for the game, and Bills head coach Sean McDermott calls it a health and safety issue, Tone. You see it the way they do?
Do I see it as a health issue?
Yeah.
To who would it be a health issue? To the mental health of the teams that can't stop the play? Because they can't stop the play.
Jason Kelce says it's a health
Sean
issue.
McDermott...
He was on the right end.
We'll get to him. Okay. We'll get to him. What Sean McDermott is doing is very cagey. Anytime you say health and safety, the ears perk up on Park Avenue because they want to be on the right side of health and safety. And it also makes him look a little selfless because his team uses this a lot.
A little bit.
Second most
but not,
to the Eagles.
Not the same way.
But I'm sorry. My feeling about this play is different than that. My feeling is the only reason you are coming out against this play is because you're not as good at it as the Eagles are. The only motivation for you is sour grapes and just to discuss with how good the Eagles are with this play. I'm not crazy about the play. Aesthetically, it bothers me. It looks like rugby and not football. I don't know how it can be legal, honestly, Mike, to either push or pull a guy
It used to not be legal.
Over the end zone.
There was a rule you couldn't do this.
But this is also football. So don't get on a moral high horse here.
I agree with you.
Get better coaches, get better players, stop the play, and after you stop the play, then say I want to ban it.
I'm suspect whenever I hear anybody in NFL talk about health and safety. And I get it. There are some issues. Jason Kelce.
What did he say exactly?
I mean, Jason Kelce basically hated running the play.
Did he say he got hurt from it?
He just talked about the risk he felt he was at. Other people have talked about that, too.
Oh, well,
Chris Jones with the Chiefs.
I understand.
Had this, somebody massaging his neck in the Super Bowl.
If you have data collected that says this is a dangerous play, the way they had for the kickoff, then I'll say get rid of it. But collect the data for me.
Well, I don't know. It could be, you could just be looking at stories that each player brings into a meeting with the competition committee to say, hey, wait a minute. Here's my anecdotal evidence. I don't have data yet. It's new.
But if you get a lot of people saying, I'm on the offensive line or the defensive line, I'm getting crushed.
I'm conflicted because I don't want to see strength plays outlawed because it reminds me of the football I grew up with. Right. And you know what?
They're pushing the other guys back.
They are. And so get some guys that can't be pushed. Do that. So I tend to be with you on this. On the other hand, and I don't know why tush push is more popular than brotherly shove in Philadelphia. Well, brotherly shove is so cool.
Yes, but that's germane only to Philadelphia. Tush push can be used anywhere.
Nobody else has perfected it. Only the Eagles have perfected it.
Which is why I think everybody else is against it.
They are.
Because they have
Eagles
perfected it.
But you also, by the way, when you got a quarterback who can bench like 400 pounds and a running back who can squat 600, it's not just the linemen.
That's right.
You got to stop those two, and you can't.
Yeah, I am not necessarily going on the safety part of this. Any play in football, you can get hurt. You could be running in an open field and tear your Achilles or blow out your knee. Those plays happen. So I'm not looking at this from a safety point of view. It just doesn't look like football to me. It just doesn't look like it should be a part of the game. That the game is based on a lot of different angles, plays, whatever you want to call it. And this is one that just looks like something that's, should not be a part of football. That's just the way I see it. As far as, the safety part of it, you can get freak injuries on the line. The play that Sam Cosmi got hurt on in the playoff game against Detroit, his knee got bent in the wrong direction. That can happen anytime. So it's not that. It's just that it does not look like football to me. And, yeah, the Eagles have perfected it, and it is true. Hey, if they can do it, you can do it too. And, maybe it works that way. But I think what Washington did in that championship game, where, you got the ball at the 1-yard line anyway. So Frankie Louvu jumps over the line of scrimmage. And half the distance to the goal. Big deal. You're at the 1 anyway. Then he does it again, another half distance, so another 3 inches. What difference does it make? And if you're going to have other teams do that, I mean, the referees, seemingly out of frustration, said at one point, well, if you keep doing that, we'll just award them a touchdown. Oh, really? It's in the rule book? You can do that? It must be buried deep in the rule book. But I think, if you really want to, get this out of the NFL, I wonder how many teams are going to look at what Washington did in that championship game and say, well, we're going to do the same thing against them. The Kansas City didn't do it in the Super Bowl. I don't remember. There must have been a case where they had an opportunity to do it and they didn't. But if you want to make a mockery of football with the tush push, make a mockery on the other side with the way you defend it and see where it goes from here. But again, the football that I knew for most of my life was you can't do that. You can't push the runner from behind. You just can't do it. And somewhere along the line, they said, it's okay to do it. And the Eagles go, oh, really? Well, watch what we're going to do with that. I'm also excited about this tonight. I'm going to the Maryland game. This is as big a game as they've had there maybe in the last 10 years. They're playing number 8, Michigan State. Maryland is comfortably in the NCAA tournament. Now you're looking at seeding and how far up they can go. They could get, I think, as high as like a 4 seed. I think they're projected either a 5 or a 6 right now. But a game like this, if they win this, it would take them a long way. And there is a nickname for the starting 5. I guess this is picking up some traction. It's called the Crab 5. Not the greatest nickname, but Maryland is getting almost all of their scoring from the starting 5. Derek Queen, one of the best players in the country, probably be a lottery pick. Julian Reese, who's wrapping up a great career at Maryland, probably has a chance to play in the NBA. Jacoby Gillespie, Rodney Rice, and Selton Miguel. They score virtually all of it. They have scored 91% of the points that the team has. And they play the bulk of the minutes, though they bring some guys off the bench. But when you're looking for scoring, that's where it comes from. And while this is, somewhat different now in college basketball, it's really not. If you look at the history of the game, how it used to be that you would play, a coach might play 7, but 5 or 6 would get the bulk of the minutes. And I look back, one of the most famous games, not in Maryland history, but in the history of the NCAA tournament, or this was not actually a tournament game, but it changed the whole way the tournament was done, was the famous game, 1974, the ACC championship between Maryland and NC State. They were two top 5 teams, and the winner in those days went on to the NCAA tournament, which only had 25 teams, and the loser was done. Could go to the NIT, but no chance to play for the national championship. And there's certainly a case to be made that Maryland could have made it to that. Had they beaten NC State, they might have been the best team in the tournament, because NC State went on and they stopped UCLA's seven win streak. They won 7 straight titles, and they were able to stop that in the semifinals, in the Final Four, and were able to get on to the championship game where they beat Marquette. And if you look back at that, it's an overtime game. They played 7 guys, but as you look at the box, Tom Roy got just a few minutes off the bench, maybe 7 or 8 minutes off the bench, and I think there was one other player that got a little bit. Billy Hahn, I think, played about 2 or 3 minutes in that game. But the bulk of the game was the starting 5: John Lucas, Mo Howard, Len Elmore, Tom McMillan, and Owen Brown. Those were your 5. They didn't call them the Crab 5. But in this day and age where, you're playing a lot of guys, a lot of coaches will play 10. They play, I think, 8 or 9 at times for Maryland, but the other guys don't score. And so, the Crab 5 getting some traction. The Crab 5 is going to have to play out of their minds tonight. But this is going to be a great game tonight in College Park. And that's it for me. Thank goodness. Bram is coming up next, and I will see you back here tomorrow morning at 9 a.m.